and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. As we do every day with introductions, he's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and good morning.
Man, what a few weeks to be a Philadelphian.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball team on a hot streak, win a Super Bowl, and go ahead and peel another national championship, does Jay Wright.
Get in the playoffs.
Man.
But is anyone smoother about it than Jay Wright?
No.
He just walks the walk. He's having a good time. Life is good.
He was pretty good. Everything except that tie bar on the suit thing.
I knew
you had such a hard time with that.
Can I ask you a personal question?
I'm afraid, but okay.
Do you have just the slightest crush on Jay Wright?
Oh, there's no doubt.
Okay.
It's there.
It's more than the slightest.
Yeah. I have a crush on two people, Danny Ainge and Jay Wright. I've been very open about that.
One of those totally understandable. The other one, man.
Okay. Well, let's not say which one is which. Let's just get into it. I love Jay. He was always great with me when I was in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. So. He's been great to the show.
All right. Speaking of the big marquee game last night, so 2 months ago, the aforementioned Jay Wright came on this show. He laughed. He smiled. He talked about the joy of college basketball. And I thought to myself, no way this guy's going to win another title. He's too nice. Well, Jay Wright won a title last night, another one. Villanova capping off their dominant tournament performance with a 79-62 win over Michigan, led by 31 points out of the guy of the night, Dante DiVincenzo, off the bench. Wildcats win their second national title in 3 years, beating Michigan. All right, let's start the conversation with you, Chris Carter. How are the Wildcats able to be so dominant, not only the entire season, but then, of course, in the biggest game of the tournament?
Well, for people who didn't watch the regular season that close, they might not understand why Villanova was there. 14 of the weeks during the season, they were the number one ranked team. But they had a couple injuries during the season that it only made the team stronger once they got into the tournament. So not only are they one of the best teams, we know with Coach Wright, they're one of the best coach teams, but with these injuries during the season, it allowed them to put minutes on other players that ultimately would be the key to them winning the third title in school history. Their ability to understand what they were doing offensively, because they are a three-point shooting team, and even when the three-point shots weren't going, they stuck with their system. They start going to more isolation, taking guys off the dribble, which we hadn't seen them do a whole bunch, not the whole lineup. But Jay Wright, they were able to change the game plan during the game when they weren't hitting the three-point shots, go to more isolation to get the offense going. And then ultimately, I mean, this is the best team in college basketball because of their overall depth. We saw they have the super sub, Dante, come off the bench. Man. And when you have that type of productivity, they're going to be hard to beat in college basketball. Also, it's refreshing. They have a star freshman. They have a star sophomore, star junior. And we know their senior class, like they've been winners since they've been there. So this is the combination that I believe is lethal in college basketball and supersedes the one-and-dones with all the attention on all the freshmen. A program like Villanova that has those stars at every level. And, I mean, this is not going to stop. When you can build a program like Jay's done, you can be competitive every year.
And I want to talk about the program and what this means for Nova historically in a moment. We alluded to yesterday what rarefied air they would go into with a third championship, what rarefied air Jay Wright as a coach would go into with a second championship. Before we do that, you mentioned the star sub, Dante DiVincenzo. Like, this guy is a sub in name only, right? He comes off the bench, but he was their fourth leading scorer during the year. He plays starters minutes. And what we saw from him in the first half reminded me of Jerry McNamara at Syracuse, Carmelo's year, 18 points in the first half, 6 3-pointers against Kansas. What Jerry McNamara, Syracuse ended up winning that title, but Jerry McNamara got then shut down in the second half. DiVincenzo won them this basketball game, in my eyes, with his 9 consecutive points in the second half.
Also, to start the second half, he didn't start, but 52 seconds into
He was back in there.
I mean, Jay put him right
in. And that was a great call by Jay.
Jay Wright wasn't going to totally adjust, wasn't going to change what they'd been doing all year long. They got to the national championship starting these 5, starting the second half with these 5, the same as their game starters, but he knew who his hot hand was. This was a game that was playing exactly the way Michigan wanted it to. With 5.5, 6 minutes left in the first half, Michigan's up 21-16. And then to close the first half, It was a 21-7 run by Villanova. That was part of a larger run that was 35-12. And I tweeted at halftime, it felt like the game got away from Michigan those last 5 minutes. Like, they had played so well for the first 15. To go into halftime down nearly double digits was going to be so difficult for them to overcome. And DiVincenzo was spectacular. Now, this is a team that's got two definite pros on it. DiVincenzo might be a pro. It's got a lottery pick on it, Mikal Bridges. But he was the guy last night that led them to victory. 30 points in a national championship game is a tremendous feat.
And here's what's so great about him, too, is that the other players rallied around him, right? They even said, hey, we knew he had the hot hand. We didn't need to be the star. We've been the star. It was great to see him come off the bench, and it was nice to know, like, what a great team concept they have. But this wasn't just the final game that this Nova team dominated. I mean, they covered the spread every game. They were so dominant throughout the entire tournament. How were they able to do that, CC?
Man, they're really talented. I mean, they can score the basketball. Let's not forget, during the regular season, NCAA leading 83 points a game, and to be able to play that type of pace, that was going to be a problem for Michigan. Big Ten plays a great brand of basketball, but their inability to build score in the upper 70s or 80 points, as we can see, the numbers would indicate if it was going to be a game that was going to have that type of pace, Michigan was going to have a hard time being able to defeat Villanova. Also, Michigan forgot Mo Wagner. They forgot to throw the ball to him. He had the mismatch of the game. As you can see, when they started the game, the second half or the first half, they did not go back into the paint. When they did a lot of pick and roll, and they would get the mismatch with him on a smaller player. And they forgot to go to him, keep going to him. He was getting fouls. He was getting easy shots. I believe Villanova was afraid. That was the only offensive player from Michigan that they were afraid of. So when they went away from that, that also led to Villanova getting this win.
When we went to the first commercial break, Wagner had 7 points. At the under 16, he's got 7 points. He then finishes with 16, and there were a lot of mismatches. There were a lot of times you had a small guard on him, and they were not getting him the basketball. Nope. To your point about them embracing DiVincenzo's game, he needed to have this game because Jalen Brunson, the National Player of the Year, the best player in college basketball according to all the awards this year, was in foul trouble and was not on from the field. It was Mikal Bridges and DiVincenzo that led him to the victory. To your point, though, about the dominant performance, now this is only the second team since the field has expanded to 64 teams that has won every game by at least a dozen points. Their average margin of victory was nearly 18 points. That's
outstanding.
And by the way, so for example, the team that had a better average margin of victory en route to a national championship was the Villanova team 2 years ago. And you might say, how could that be? They won a game. They won the national championship on a buzzer beater. That was a close game. Their Elite Eight game was a close game. That's because they had a couple 30 and 40-point wins mixed in there. Villanova was just beating everybody by 12 to 25 points. Like every game in this tournament, they were just so clearly the best team out there. And unlike Michigan, it's not taking anything away from Michigan, who had a fortuitous turn in the bracket. Until the national championship game, they hadn't played a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seed. Villanova played about the toughest bracket you could play. It played true to seed. They played a 3 instead of a 2, but they didn't have any Cinderellas in their path. They were beating, after the first game against Radford, some of the best teams in college basketball, and they were winning these games by halftime.
So now Villanova they've won 2 out of the last 3. What does this mean? Where do they sit big picture? Where does that fall for you?
Trying to build a program. I mean, continue. They might lose. They're going to definitely lose one guy. They could lose as many as 3 guys. If the freshman Spellman decides to go into the draft, you have to replace him. I'm not going to put them in the category as far as what do they do next. Are they for next year's? Because there's too many moving parts. There's too many freshmen coming in that we don't know about. But Jay Wright's team will be very, very good. They will be the favorite in the Big East again. When you look at Xavier, who they had problems with during the regular season, right?
Yep.
They lose their coach.
They beat Xavier twice in the regular season, but Xavier ended their streak of consecutive conference championships.
Yes. Now, Xavier, they're losing their coach, Chris Mack, to Louisville.
Yep.
So what will they do from there? But they are the preeminent team, especially on the East Coast. Like, I think they have a transfer coming over is going to help them. They can play. They got a big time. They got a top 15 freshman coming in, a 5-star recruit that's going to help them. But it really hinges on, does Brunson decide to come back for his 4th year? And does Spellman, the freshman, does he decide to go to the NBA? I think he should come back. That's where Villanova is going forward.
And DiVincenzo will come back. Like, I understand people
absolutely.
I mean, I think he might end up being an NBA player, but he will come back. He's not a leave early type of player. I'd be very surprised if Mikal Bridges go be a pro, go make money, go be a top 15 pick. There's no question about it. But as far as what this means for the program to me, you got to keep in mind who you're recruiting. Everyone you're recruiting at this point in college basketball was born in the year 2000 or later, right? That's how young these guys are. Since the year 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have won more championships in these players' lifetimes. I'm not even including, obviously, their first one in '85. From 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have a better winning history for when these players were alive to watch college basketball. Like, Villanova has won as many championships in the last 3 years as Kansas, one of the true blue bloods, has won in the last 60 years.
That's crazy.
They've won as many championships they've won more championships in the last 2 years in the last 3 years than UCLA has won in the last 30 years. Like, so the blue blood thing can kind of be fluid. And if you're a young recruit and you say, I want to play for a cool program, I want to play in a cool city, and I want to play for a program that has a winning history.
And a good coach.
And a great coach.
Sorry,
a great coach.
throw that out there.
That is, Villanova now is all of a sudden near, if not at the top of that list.
Right. They end up getting one of the recruits that left Arizona with Arizona involved in the shoe scandal.
Right. Yep.
He's decided to come to Villanova. So the kids out there, their eyes are on Villanova as a viable option, one of the top programs.
We have Jason Capel coming on a little bit later. We'll talk more about this game. All right, coming up, could the Patriots really be moving on from Rob Gronkowski? Talk about that next on First Things First. Anyway, hey, have we seen the last of Gronk in New England? Because rumors are swirling that Bill Belichick is frustrated with the fact that his tight end hasn't been willing to fully commit to the Pats this season. Oh, but don't worry, because rumors are also swirling that Gronk is equally as frustrated with the strict confines of the Patriot way. No official word from either side, but it appears as if things could potentially be getting contentious in New England. Cece, could the Patriots really trade Gronkowski? You think that's something that's actually on the table?
Anyone's been following the Patriots through the years. No, anyone can be traded except Tom Brady. Like, we all know that. There's no one that Bill Belichick won't trade. I mean, anyone. Anyone in that organization, well, the Krafts, the Sons, and Brady.
The adopted son, Tom Brady, the one that
the anointed.
Robert Kraft told you was another son of his.
Yes, that's it. Anyone else in New England, as we can see with the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, equipment guy, doctors, like all those people can go. And Belichick will get rid of most of them. But Gronk can be traded. But my thing is, I believe that Gronk, he has let this information get out there, but I believe Gronk is smart enough to realize that things would be different in his life without Tom Brady. So he doesn't necessarily like how they do things in New England, but he's also understanding that, wow, man, they come up with a great game plan for me week in, week out. They put me outside. They find the mismatches in every defense. So every game I'm in with New England, I got a chance to be a superstar, especially with TB12 throwing the ball to him. So, yes, Gronk might not be happy with the situation there. And New England, of course, they can trade. They'll trade anyone.
Right.
We've seen them trade some of their best players, and that's one of Bill Belichick's things that he does. He likes to get out of a relationship at the right time for him. When he feels like you might have a little more football left in you, but your interest has started to change, or I have to give you a new contract, that's when Belichick typically gets off of those players.
I think Rob Gronkowski would love to be a free agent. I don't know that he would love to be traded.
Well, he's not going to ever be a free agent.
Agreed. That's the point that Rob is unhappy in New England, or at least not as happy as he would like to be in New England. And if he could pick a team to go to, I'm sure he'd love to do that. But that's not the situation in which he's in. He's got 2 years left on his contract. The Patriots would, if they wanted to,
at a reasonable number.
At a very reasonable number, which, by the way, I think you could argue might make him more likely to be traded, only because you have 2 years of a reasonable number for an excellent player. That is a more attractive asset. We talked about Odell being available, right? Odell, I believe, to be a better player than Rob Gronkowski. It's close, but I believe Odell's better. But if you trade for Odell, what comes with that is you have to instantly give him an enormous contract. Trade for Gronk, you got him for $8 million this year, $9 million next year. But there's an aspect to this that I think that people are forgetting or not considering, which is what was the Patriots' major free agent loss this offseason? Nate Solder, their left tackle. When we talk about Rob Gronkowski, the highlights are obviously him wreaking havoc as a pass catcher. But what is one of the things everyone says about Rob Gronkowski? Absent of pass catching, the best blocking tight end in football. We also know how paramount Tom Brady's health is, particularly now that they have no backup plan at quarterback. Not that there was ever a great non-Tom Brady plan. How much are you willing to put Brady at risk? How much are you willing to put your running game at risk in the same offseason if you lose your best offensive lineman and your best down-the-line blocker in Rob Gronkowski? Like, there is an aspect to that. I know people will be like, last 2 years, 12-1 without Gronk. They're fine without Gronk. You go a little deeper into the actual football part of it. With the loss of Nate Solder, Gronk, to me, becomes more valuable than he had been.
I don't know if Rob Gronkowski is as tradable as we think he is, because he has gone away from the Patriot way more than any other player on that team. Things he said, the things he's done, the hit he had last year. I mean, if anyone has strayed from Bill Belichick's sort of, confining modes, I think it's been Rob Gronkowski, and there's never been an instance or a conversation we've had where he's been on the trading block in any way. You talk about this concept of all in. Is he all in on this team? What does that really mean? I mean,
he's not. He's not all in.
What does all in mean? I mean, what happens at this point in the season? We're in April. What does all in mean that Belichick would say, this guy does want to be here or doesn't want to be here?
Well, the thing about Gronk has let the information get out that he's not happy with the way they do things, which is not surprising. I think it's hard to analyze football players in the offseason. Are they all in? It's the offseason. You don't have to be all in. You really don't have to be all in. Gronk has never said he wanted to be traded. We're basically talking about, because Gronk's not happy, will Belichick potentially trade him?
Exactly.
Because he's not happy. All right? Now, Belichick getting this information, I'm sure he's not surprised by it. I'm sure New England is looking at every option available for him, but I don't believe that Gronk necessarily helped himself if he was traded by saying that he didn't like it in New England, because I believe that Gronk's injuries, because a lot of times people forget who you are. Like, when you get his medical form, you're going to be like, wow, how much football does this guy have left? And if he doesn't like playing in New England, he doesn't like winning, wow, what's going to keep his attention in pro football after this one season? Like, I don't want to trade for Gronk and he's going to every year be like, is he going to retire or not? So I believe that Gronk, I believe it was his natural instinct to say, man, I'm questioning how long I want to do this. But in doing that, it's not going to endear him to a lot more teams than who would have been interested in Gronk's services.
And Gronk, I know people don't look at Gronk and say, that's a brilliant guy, but he's not a dumb person. And he knows where he plays and who he plays for. And he knows the implications when someone with his type of prominence and social media following goes on Instagram and Twitter. And it's one thing to congratulate Danny Amendola. It's another thing on Instagram and Twitter to say in all caps, you're free. He knows the reverberations that will have on shows like this, and most importantly, in New England. And he chose to do it anyway, and so we'll see how Belichick feels about it.
All right, let's talk some basketball on the other side. Coming up, are the Rockets in the driver's seat for the title? Next on First Things First. Time for stories to start your morning. Villanova dominated Michigan last night, 79-62, to take home their second title in 3 years. Wildcats were led by sixth man Dante DiVincenzo, who dropped in 31 points, took home the Most Outstanding Player award. It was a great season for Villanova. Nick, how was Nova able to dominate the Wolverines?
After basically about 15 minutes of the Wolverines playing their style of basketball, Nova started hitting shots, and it felt to me a little bit like Michigan went away from their game plan. You saw a few times, particularly early in the second half, Nova came down, hit a shot, and Michigan did what you can't do against this team. Take a quick bad shot. You take a quick bad shot against Villanova, you're drawing dead. You got to basically play a perfect game to beat this team when they're fully healthy anyway, and they got away from their game plan. And Cece, you brought up Mo Wagner, like, They didn't get their best player the ball.
Yeah, he should get more than 11 shots. He played 33 minutes. He dominated the beginning, the first 10 minutes of the game. You got to get him more shots than that. But also you have to look at the veteran players and Jay Wright, everyone deferring offensively to go to Dante. Like, we're going to run the offense through him. That was not the plan A. That was not plan B. But in this game, they decided that was the best thing to do. That's how Nova gets that win.
It was great.
All right, congratulations to them. To the NFL now, Jimmy Garoppolo went 5-0 as a starter for the 49ers last season. That was more than enough for head coach Kyle Shanahan, who said he knew Jimmy G was their guy after just 3 games. 49ers gave Garoppolo a 5-year, $137.5 million contract this offseason. So, hey, hopefully 3 games was enough. So, CeCe, what are realistic expectations for Jimmy G this season?
Get San Francisco into the playoffs.
Ooh, playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the question was. What's the expectations, Chris?
Right.
Chris said get them to the playoffs. Like, absolutely. Get into the playoffs. You look at the competition they have in that division. Look at Seattle. Seattle's coming back to the field. Arizona's in transition, looking for a quarterback with a new coach. Yes, absolutely. San Francisco should have their eyes set on the playoffs.
Man, if they were in the AFC, I might agree with you. I think fair expectations are getting to 8 wins, maybe 9 wins. The one team you left out in their division is, I think, an excellent team in the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, I know they're the best. I thought the fans would know that.
Okay.
I mean, you got to give them some credit.
Of course.
They're getting up in the morning at 6:30 to watch a sports show. Hey, the Rams are pretty good.
Fair enough. In order to get a wild card in the NFC, I think you're probably going to need, like you did last year, 11-plus wins, and I think the Rams are better than them. So I think you can have a successful season in San Francisco without making the postseason. You got to keep in mind, up until Jimmy G took over, this was a team that was competing for the number 2 pick of the draft before they went on that 5-game winning streak. I think 8 or 9
How many games
wins.
did they win in a row just in the season?
5 straight games.
Yeah, after you win 5 straight games, you're thinking about getting into the playoffs.
Okay.
An NFL team.
All right. Hey, how important is a good night's sleep? Very important if you're Klay Thompson, apparently. So in a recent podcast, Kevin Durant let us in on a little secret. Klay slept through practice the day before he went off for 60 points against the Pacers last season. Nick, how much more impressive does that make Klay's 60-point game?
Man, here's the thing. If you were to tell me NBA players are going to sleep through practice and his teammates are not going to be that surprised, not going to be that angry, and just laugh about it like, it's Klay, I would have guessed it was Klay Thompson. Like, Klay is known. What do you always say, CC? He's the coolest guy on the Warriors.
Oh, definitely.
The chillest guy on the Warriors, I might say. Listen, he talked about it in the podcast. I listened to it. He's like, we called Klay, and we're like, what happened? He's like, man, when I woke up, I was an hour and a half late already. I figured I might as well just get some more sleep. And then he dropped 60 points in, I believe, 29 minutes the next night. I don't think there's many guys in the league that can do that. Klay Thompson's one of them.
It's an impressive thing, especially because you know your schedule. And you get anxiety to be able to come out the next night. But I'm not surprised with Klay. I'm not surprised, though. Of all the Warriors, of their 3 stars, that was the one that you said, one of them overslept, next night got 60. I've been like, that's probably Klay.
Yeah. The oversleeping is the context.
Yeah, KD would have had one of his Twitter accounts wake him up.
Hey, finally, we're talking Tiger Woods. So the Masters starts on Thursday. The buzz starts today with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson being paired together for a practice round. Tiger will be looking to take home his 5th green jacket. What are fair expectations, CC, for Tiger heading into Augusta?
I know Tiger Woods. The fair expectations for him would be to take home his 5th green jacket.
Yeah.
And the reason why is he knows this golf course. This is his favorite golf tournament of all. He's won it 4 times. The golf course sets up for his skill if he can hit his driver. Now, listening to Freddie Couples do an interview after yesterday's practice round with Tiger Woods, Tiger's made a couple of different changes in his equipment leading up to this event. He struggled with his driver. He struggled with his 3-wood as far as can he hit those things from right to left compared to hitting them left to right, because on Augusta, the par 5s, that's what you have to do. He's put a lighter shaft in both of those. Freddie said on the first tee, if you know Augusta National, he carries it over the first bunker, which is about a 305 carry. That was his first swing of the day. He said that's the most impressive ball striking that he's seen Tiger Woods in a long, long time. So hearing that, knowing how he's played, knowing inside how much they love this course, and be able to come back. This is not a comeback like his previous comebacks at the Masters. This is Tiger Woods is returning healthy returning. He's not just returning to golf. He's played a few tournaments leading up to this, which I believe will get his nerves ready for the weekend. Tiger Woods should be the favorite at Augusta in 2018.
Listen, you pointed out the Fred Couples interview, so I listened to it. Hearing a guy that's obviously, I mean, he seems like he is something of a fan of Tiger Woods, but a pro, an all-time great, talk about him in these terms is exciting. Now I know his former coach, Hank Haney, came out and said, the idea that Tiger's even one of the top 10 favorites is ridiculous. There's some bitterness there in my eyes. When you watch what Tiger did over the last month, when you watch him come in second with a putt to force a playoff at the Valspar, that was a tournament he couldn't score in the par fives, and he still did that well. Then you watched him the following weekend in one of the toughest fields, where dominate on the par fives, and if not for an out-of-bounds shot on the fourth, the final hole of the tournament, he was potentially going to make a charge up the leaderboard where Rory ended up running away with it. But Henrik Stenson, right, Rory ended up being great. But at the time, it looked like Tiger could go get it. Cece, where are the scoring holes at Augusta, primarily? The beginning or the end of the 18?
On the back nine.
On the back nine. That's another reason this is great for Tiger, is because we know that Tiger's first hole of a tournament, first hole of a round, particularly first hole of a tournament, doesn't always go great for him. That first drive, first shot, if you blow an opportunity at a scoring hole early, if one of the easier holes is the first hole, that's not great for Tiger. But once he's in a rhythm, once you get to holes 14, 15, 16, he's in a rhythm, that sets up brilliantly for him. And Cece, what you've talked about, his erratic nature with the drivers, Augusta's a little more forgiving.
Very forgiving.
Because of how wide the fairways are. Like all these things, I know it's rose-colored glasses, but for all those actual golf reasons, I think he should absolutely be near the top of the favorites, if not the favorite.
Can you imagine if Tiger Woods, having gone through everything he's been through in the last couple of years, comes back to win his 5th Masters? Can you imagine what that would do for golf?
Yeah, I see what it's doing for golf. It's got us watching. When Tiger Woods shows up to a tournament, twice as many people are watching that event, and there is a reason. But, as Nick said, we're watching something historic here.
Yeah.
There's never been a PGA Tour player have a fused lower back, and that's where Tiger Woods is, and I expect him to win another major this year, and I'm hoping it's this Sunday.
Oh, that'd be so amazing.
All right, new topic now. So at the start of the basketball season, the Warriors were the overwhelming favorites to win it all. Overwhelming. Now with injuries up and down that roster, not so much. According to major sports books, the Rockets and Warriors both have the same odds to win the NBA title. Both teams sit at 1 and 2 in the Western Conference, so that just adds to the drama. Nick, are these teams really that even?
Well, right now they're not even. Right now the Rockets are better than them. Right, just listen, right now the Rockets played 41 games with their best 3 players, Harden, CP3, and Clint Capella. They are 39-2 in those games. To beat the Rockets in a series, you're going to have to beat them 4 times. Assuming those top 3 guys are playing, you're going to have to do something in a 7-game stretch that has not been done, it's been done half as many times in a 41-game stretch. But what this tells me, because this was shocking to me, that I saw that the general Vegas sportsbook consensus now is Rockets-Warriors, even odds. But depending on where you shop the line, it could be a little different, but basically even odds. What this tells me is Vegas thinks what Chris Broussard thinks is the case, what Chris Carter thinks is the case, and what I have dismissed as a possibility, that the Warriors could possibly got in the first round. They are baking that into the number, that the Warriors, without Steph Curry in the first round, that the Rockets might not have to beat them. Because what the doctors are telling us that Steph should be fully healthy come round 3 of the playoffs. We know that Durant and Clay and Draymond Green, those injuries are not ones you're worried about a month from now. I don't even think they're really worried about those injuries right now. Clay is back. I mean, their guys are back. What this is telling me is, because I do think if the Rockets and the Warriors face in the Western Conference Finals, Vegas would say the Warriors are favorites whether they should be or not. Vegas thinks, the public thinks, that the Warriors are vulnerable in round 1. That a series for them without Steph Curry, even with a healthy Kevin Durant, even with the rest of their roster, that they could lose in round 1, and they don't think that about Houston, and that's fascinating to me.
I'm surprised for a different reason. I'm surprised that Houston is not the favorite more so than Golden State.
Wow.
I don't think that they should be even money. I know that Vegas is giving the respect to the Warriors, but Houston has been more consistent. Steph is out with an MCL. This is week number 2, and he could be out as much as 6 weeks. So for me, even if he does come back, I know he's not going to be 100%. Now, when the doctor tells you come back between 2 and 6 weeks, he's talking about for a normal person.
Right.
A normal person, 2 to 6 weeks. He's not saying for you to be playing championship basketball, to be in a highly contested sporting event. No, that is not baked in there. So I think Houston should be the favorite over Golden State. I don't think their odds should be even.
Cece, do you think that Steph, whenever he comes back, is not that he's not going to be back to 100% this season? Is that correct?
There's no one else we've seen with the MCL. KD talked about it. Steph, when he had it last time, that first week to 10 days, they are not healthy. Like, they are struggling. We're talking about the competition, the intensity of playoff basketball. Let's not lose sight of that. KD was out 6 weeks, and they'll tell you, they did not come back healthy. Why would we think Steph would come back healthy? Like, this is not a matter of, oh, this guy's a fast healer. We're talking about a ligament to your knee, the MCL.
Right.
So I do believe he will be hampered throughout the playoffs.
I have a question. If at the beginning of this season we said the Warriors, coming off the last couple of years that they've had, we're going to go into the playoffs without Steph Curry, is there any doubt that they'd still be as dominant?
As dominant, they wouldn't be as dominant. But I think if in game 1 of this year, Steph Curry blew his ACL.
And he was out.
And he was out for the year. I think going into game 2, the Warriors still would have been the Vegas favorites. But that was before we knew what we know about Houston. Like, the other part of this is how great Houston has been.
Yeah, I think it'd be a little bit different because you have the whole season develop a different style for Golden State.
Right.
So it's hard to make that comparison because he is coming back, and they would be a different team.
So your hesitation about the Warriors is not so much that Steph's not in it, is that whole offense runs around Steph Curry, and they don't have enough time right now to game plan an entirely new offense if you don't think he's going to be 100%.
None of the teams, the top 2 teams in the East, the top 2 teams in the West, none of those teams can afford to lose a starter, let alone someone like Steph Curry. Like, I think that we're just losing sight of how good these players are. Steph's not healthy. Wow, that's going to drastically affect the Warriors. Harden, if he wasn't healthy, it would drastically affect Houston.
But the reason that people feel differently about the Warriors is none of those other teams, and in fact, no other team in the history of the league has as their second option an MVP.
It doesn't matter. In this, it's still not enough talent to win a championship. That's the reason why they went out and got KD.
I agreed, which is why if we knew Steph was out for the year, out for the playoffs, this would not surprise me. But the fact that people are now wondering, is it enough talent to even get to the conference finals? Do you need a fully healthy Steph Curry to get through rounds 1 and rounds 2? That's crazy to me.
I just think we shouldn't analyze, they have 4 All-Stars, they have Hall of Famers. I don't believe that. When you have someone who runs the team, if Chris Paul was not available, what would we think Houston's chances were? They got no chance. All right, so how would we be able to lose the point guard, Damian Lillard? They got no chance. They might not have a chance with Damian Lillard, but when you lose the guy who runs your offense, the most prolific offense that we have seen, especially in this 4-year window that they've played, they don't have enough time to adjust to that.
All right, let's break there. Guess what? The NFL draft is coming up. Is Josh Rosen too much of a millennial to be successful in the NFL as a quarterback? Somebody thinks
Everyone in the league's
That's next. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Chris Canty. Canty,
what up,
how you doing?
Good to see you, brother.
What's good? I'm good, Jenna. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing really well.
So you got the bright colors on.
Thank you. That is what I'm wearing.
Trying to bring some warmth.
Correct. That is what I am doing.
I appreciate that.
Do you see what's happening?
I see exactly what she's doing right now.
I'm
not on board with it, Jenna.
I refuse.
I know what you're doing.
Jenna thinks this is her not being awkward because yesterday Chris Canty called her awkward, and then of course
I was striking up a conversation.
She's as awkward as can be.
Chris Canty.
So,
we'll try again tomorrow, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Epic fail. We'll try that again tomorrow. High five. The NFL draft is right around the corner. Still time for draft picks to slide up and down based on literally anything. For Josh Rosen, it's been an interesting process. So he's been called a lot, right? A little cocky, a little arrogant, a little too intellectual. Now he's being called, wait for it, a millennial. Former UCLA coach Jim Mora Jr., who coached Rosen for 3 years, had this to say about his former quarterback, quote, he needs to be challenged intellectually so he doesn't get bored. He's a millennial. He wants to know why. Millennials, once they know why, they're good. Rosen tweeted this out. Why? Shrug emoji. Hashtag why. So, Chris, what did you make of Jim Mora's comments?
Well, I didn't understand where he was coming from in terms of when he said millennial and saying that he needs to be challenged or I guess you got to engage him in this way. I think most professional athletes need to be challenged and stimulated in that way. You have to get them engaged so you can bring the best out of what that player might have to offer in terms of being able to produce on the field. So when you talk about a quarterback like Josh Rosen asking the questions, why are we doing things a certain way, I don't have an issue with that. To me, a player that wants to get to the why is going to have a better chance of being able to match his physical gifts and his skill sets and have that translate to production on the field. That's what it's all about. I don't need a guy that gets to the line of scrimmage and he panics because the look that the defense shows him on Sunday isn't what the coaches drew up for the scout team on Wednesday and Thursday. I need somebody that's capable of being able to think on their feet. And Josh Rosen strikes me as a quarterback that's capable of doing that based on what I saw on the college game tape and from what his coach is talking about him now. So I like the fact that a player wants to know why he's being asked to do certain things. I don't need a guy that's a robot on Sundays.
Yeah, a few things from what he said. I'm not a millennial, thank God, but I need to be challenged. I want to know why, and I need to be challenged even when I was in college. When I was in the pros, I need to be challenged. I'm not a millennial. I don't believe that they absolutely have to come together. What I think is going on with UCLA is I think that collectively that Jim Moore is part of the Josh Rosen team. And there was speculation that Josh potentially didn't want to go to Cleveland. I believe this is part of it. So the coach comes out with comments that would, because in deciding if he was going to go pro, the coach had a lot to do with it. There's no one in UCLA's program has more experience with pro football than Coach Moore. He also used to be a defensive back coach in the National Football League. We used to compete against him every summer with the New Orleans Saints, so I'm very familiar with Coach Moore. He is a great evaluator of talent. He does know what he's talking about, but I believe this is just a little bit of smoke for them to be able to get off the Cleveland team without them saying he does not want to go there, without him not looking bad, because he made a suggestion. I believe Cleveland should draft Sam Darnold. Now, why would he say that? I believe he loves Josh. I believe he believes Josh is a franchise quarterback. But Josh can't say he don't want to be in Cleveland, but I can. As a former NFL coach, the son of an NFL coach, I can say those things and I can take the heat. So I believe collectively their group has decided he doesn't want to be in Cleveland. And the coach enunciated some of that by saying the things that he said. NFL players do want to be challenged. NFL players, from my understanding, they want to learn. They want to get better. And to get better, you need to find out why. And most NFL coaches, which I believe they're the best coaches, they are far superior than college and high school coaches. That's why they're in the NFL. They get to the why part, and that's how they make the players better.
And we got to be fair here and not forget who has Josh Rosen been the whole time we've known him, up until his name's called on draft day. He's a college athlete. A student athlete is what we're told. What is college about? Learning, asking questions, figuring things out, being intellectually curious outside of what your career vocation is going to be. I was a lot more scattershot. I think most of us were a lot more scattershot in college than we were once we became professionals. Once you become a professional, you are much more focused. It doesn't mean your brain turns off. It doesn't mean you stop having other things that interest you, but it does mean you now have a job that you're paid to focus your primary attention on. Like the idea that the curiosity is a bad thing, I just reject in basically every line of work except for, I guess you could argue, the military, where you just have, you know what I mean? You're supposed to just take orders, follow the chain of command. Cece, you sent me a video, Josh working with Aaron Rodgers. It was actually, I think it was like a Lincoln commercial, essentially, but it was long form, and he's doing a lot of things. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is Aaron is describing, I think it was back shoulder throws, but whatever he's describing, I've seen countless videos like this or instances like this where a pro is talking to a potential draft pick, and he says to him, so you understand what I mean? And the guy just goes, yeah. And you know he doesn't actually understand it. He's just going along with it. What did Rosen do? Rosen actually stopped and said, wait, why? Explain it to me. I want that because he is going to be a rookie. He does have a lot to learn. Like someone that has a thirst for learning, I think is a positive, particularly at that position.
I just wonder, Chris, if the other part of this that bothers people is that he has a lot of outside interests. as opposed to maybe the intellectual side of it or the curiosity side of it, because there's this mentality in football that you want football players, especially young football players, to need, eat, breathe, desire, crave football, and not have football be like, I love football, but I love like 1,000 other things as well. Like when you come in, you want these guys to be, and you talked about this, Cece, completely committed to the craft wholeheartedly so that you coaches can coach you, so that you can learn, so that you can be the best you can be. And I wonder if putting it out there that Josh Rosen has all these outside interests, it makes it appear as if football is a hobby or his job as opposed to his lifeblood.
Well, here's the thing, Jen. I think people are concerned that a player might not be as committed if they're interested in other things outside of football, but I don't think that's true. There's nothing wrong with being a balanced individual. And so when I hear all of the things about Josh Rosen in terms of he's a free thinker and he likes to, engage in conversations and stuff outside of topics that relate to football, I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that's a good thing to be a balanced person, because if you have somebody that's out of whack, so to speak, then you don't know that that person is going to be grounded enough to be consistent in his approach to his job. And I think that's the concern with a lot of teams that see guys with interest outside of football. Are you committed and do you love football versus is this something that you're just you like the things that come along with it? So I think that's the question that has to be answered. But you don't know that unless you get into the interview process with Josh Rosen and have conversations.
Right. A player who went through a similar thing was Robert Smith at Ohio State. When he had a problem because he couldn't take a certain class because in his major, I think he was in pre-med at the time, was interested in being a doctor at Ohio State. The professor that was teaching the class in the spring, he could take that class, but he would have to miss some football practice. In Ohio State, we don't let players take classes after 1 o'clock because you're into the daily schedule. So Robert had a problem with that. So he had some of these same questions. Does he love football? Is he more interested in being a doctor? Is he more interested in his education? Is he too much of an intellectual? And this was a long time ago. So it's not as if we haven't had this question before. Most of these people, though, they're not in the NFL locker room. They don't realize there's a lot of bright people in there. There's a lot of bright coaches. And the more you can learn, the more you can learn does not put a ceiling on your potential. Regardless of what your ability is athletically, if you're not a learned person, your ceiling is limited to what you can be. The greatest athletes that we have seen, they also happen to be the people that are learned in their craft. And that elevates them above people who are just talented. Everyone in the league is talented. So what's going to separate you? Your ability to be able to learn something and apply it and apply that skill to your game. The locker room is full of people just like Josh Rosen. They just don't have the same background. They don't come from wealthy families. They don't have the things that he had going for him when they got to this point in their life.
And I happen to reject the premise that you can just lump millennials into one group and say this is how millennials are. But let's just say that's correct, because I know a lot of people feel the way, oh, these millennials. Well, guess who Josh Rosen's going to be playing with? A bunch of millennials. Millennials are people born from 82 to 04. Like, basically everyone in the league, Aaron Rodgers' age or younger, is in that group. So if it is a lot of people he's going to be playing with that are intellectually curious, do have outside interests, that makes him relatable to them. We're seeing guys throughout with the more socially conscious athlete now, we're seeing guys show you that while they are extraordinary athletes and very dedicated to their craft, they do have outside interests. Like, to me, that makes you relatable as a
right now in the NFL locker room, it's more geared towards millennials and how they teach things, how everything's applied, how everything is downloaded on the computers.
Yeah.
It is not fit for the generation before them. The NFL right now is fit for millennials, and that's why the league will continue to prosper.
Well, Chris Canty, I have no outside interest other than this show. This is literally the only thing
that's not true.
That is 100% true.
You are a gym rat.
You're right. I have two interests.
Exactly. We'll be doing stuff related to the show.
2 interests. That's it. Just the gym and this show. Stop rolling
Dustin,
your eyes.
check it out.
Chris Carter. Stick around, Chris Canty. Coming up, can Amari Cooper and the Raiders turn it around under John Gruden? Back here on First Things First with Chris Canty. Amari Cooper was one of the most highly sought-after prospects coming out of college, and for the first 2 years with the Raiders, he was as good as predicted, combining for over 2,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. And then year 3, much like Jaws 3, major disappointment, only catching 40.
Glad that cracked you up, Jenna. One person in America needs to laugh at that reference.
It was the worst movie. Only catching 48 passes and struggling with drops. Raiders head coach John Gruden said, quote, "We need him to be the player he was the first 2 years." Chris, can Amari Cooper turn it around next season?
Can he turn it around? Absolutely. Will he turn it around?
Will he?
That's got a better chance than Jaws.
That was a terrible movie. I'm
just saying, she put that out there. That's what she said. It wasn't going to be awkward today.
Yes.
That's what she started that.
Why was that awkward? It was a
no
joke.
reason.
Okay,
On
no
Amari
reason.
Cooper.
Amari Cooper.
Thank you.
Struggled with some injuries last year. Obviously, the drops became a problem. Wasn't consistent with the hands, but the talent is undeniable. We saw that in the first couple of years. My only question is, with John Gruden saying he wants to take it back to 1998, how involved is that passing game really going to be? How intricate is it really going to be? Because with that big physical offensive line, it seems like it would lend itself to more running the football and getting that ground game back together rather than just trying to air it out. Now, they got rid of one of Derek Carr's favorite targets in Michael Crabtree. They did sign Jordy Nelson in free agency. I don't know how that's going to go in terms of being able to establish that chemistry, that rapport. I think that was more about the culture in that locker room. So does Jordy Nelson help Amari Cooper get back on track? I think that remains to be seen. He's probably a little bit better of a mentor than Michael Crabtree would probably be. But in terms of getting Amari Cooper back to being a 1,000-yard receiver, a Pro Bowl caliber receiver, I think it has to do with making sure that he has his confidence as a receiver and that he can get himself physically able to be on the field every single week and be productive. I think that's the biggest concern with Coop, is making sure that he's healthy.
Yeah, Amari is like a lot of young wide receivers. They might have some type of success initially, but the game is moving too fast for him. Amari, he should be one of the perennial Pro Bowl players, especially with Carr as his quarterback, so he doesn't have that excuse. Amari's problem is he's just putting too much pressure on himself. He is the total opposite of what you think a wide receiver should be. He's one of the hardest workers in the building. He is not a me type of guy. He comes from Alabama. How did he get to Alabama? By Miami of Florida, Northwestern High School. You don't leave Miami and go to Alabama looking for the easy way out. Now, he was only a 3-star recruit because he fractured his hip when he was a junior, so Nick Saban was able to get him. But if you look at, he is out of the same cloth of Julio Jones. He's not the physical specimen that Julio is, and Julio never really struggled with the drops there. So Amari, his problems are correctable. So Gruden is right. A lot of that offense will be focused around Amari. So these things will be corrected. I expect Amari to be more consistent. I expect more of his targets to come down with completions, because it does not make sense for him to have only a 50% completion rate in the NFL. 50% of his targeted, he's only catching them. That's second worst in the NFL. Amari Cooper is a better receiver than that. I believe he'll only get better with Gruden and Jordy Nelson. I believe him and Jordy Nelson have very similar work ethics and very similar personality. So I believe it will be a bonus getting Jordy Nelson from Green Bay and what he brings to Amari Cooper. I think we'll see the best of Amari Cooper in 2018.
All right, listen, this is an area where you are a particular expert on it. So
Really?
I want to ask you a few questions. Well,
You might know a few things.
No, but I mean, I want the audience to know, not just because of the position, but because of the player, because of where the player played high school football, where the player played college football.
Yes, I almost watched every one of his senior season games when he was playing at Miami Northwestern.
That's in high school before he goes and plays for your friend Nick Saban. Like, so there's players from Florida that go to Alabama that play this position. It doesn't get more in your wheelhouse than this. So explain this to me. Why would a guy with this level of talent deal with drops? I know you said it's more mental, but take us into the wide receiver's brain. Like, I know you told me, everyone talks about Odell on the boat trip, and you and I have talked that if Odell doesn't drop that first pass, that maybe that entire game goes differently for him. So take us into a wide receiver's mind for a minute on this, like how the drops beget
The first
drops.
thing that I would do, if I was John Gruden, I would get Amari's eyes checked, because I know he is a hand catcher. He has soft hands, and he's had success at every level he's been at. He's never had as many drops that he's had since he's been in the pros. So for me, it's not a skill thing. It's not a technique thing. To me, I don't believe he's picking up the ball. You can see the ball get on top of him. He misses a lot of easy balls. And you can see sometime in the film, he said, man, is that the sun? You could see him having problem with his eyes. So for me, the first thing I would check, like we did with Jake Reed in Minnesota, was we got his eyes checked to make sure that his, not glasses, but if he has some type of weakness in one of the eyes that prevents him from picking up the spin of the ball, and that becomes very, very important. Carr throws a great ball. You should not have that many drops. When you have that many drops, typically you would see it with someone like Peyton Manning or Eli, who throws a wobbly ball. When you have a tight spiral like that, there is no excuse. And I believe that's the first thing that I would look at. And I just believe it's also wide receiver maturity. You get more mature. You don't have those lapses in focus during the game. That's one thing that young receivers you see in the league also.
And then I want to follow up and ask you something, because you alluded to, you remove Michael Crabtree, you bring in Jordy Nelson. For the players in the locker room, like, I think, is Crabtree and Nelson about equivalent players? Crabtree maybe a little bit better at this point in his career.
Yeah.
Nelson post ACL. What does it say to the guys in the locker room when the new head coach maybe substitutes a slightly better player for a slightly worse player, and the reason is what you described it as? Ostensibly, it's about culture. And he gives, by the way, that other player a new contract while moving on from Michael Crabtree.
Well, he also moved on from Marquette King yesterday.
Yep.
So it's clear that John Gruden is trying to send a message about what he wants his players' mentality to be. And I don't have a problem with that as long as it works out. And that's a risky gamble to take, especially when you cut your quarterback's favorite target. Derek Carr, that's clearly his favorite target over the past year and a half. So when you start getting rid of those type of players and the production that Crabtree brought to that team, you better be able to replace it. And that's where I think Amari Cooper steps in, to your point, CC. Jordy Nelson being there and being more of a mentor for Cooper to try to get him back on track, because the talent to me is undeniable. His skill set is there. It's just a matter of making sure that he's healthy and that he's confident.
Yeah, Amari Cooper has the personality of someone like Larry Fitzgerald, A.J. Green, and Julio Jones. He is not the type of person. He needs help and assistance and guidance, but he's not the kind of wide receiver who needs a mentor. He's got his life together. He's very, very mature. Started at Alabama as a freshman and went on to start 3 straight years there. National championship. So he has the type of maturity and focus that you want.
And he left after his true junior year, correct?
Yes. Yeah, he's still a very young
That's what I was
kid.
going to say. People forget that ages matter here. Some guys leave Alabama at 24. You know, when Amari came into the league, if I remember correctly, he was the youngest player in his draft class, or the second youngest player. So even though he's going into year 4, he's still a very young player, which people got to remember.
I heard that middle school and secondary schools in Alabama are really tough. Kids, they have a hard time getting through that sometimes.
We'll see you a little bit later in the show.
That's why they're 24 when they leave
High school.
Wow.
Coming up, how badly do the Cavs need to make a statement tonight against the Raptors? Next on First Things First.
I was more saying.
Hey, if you only have time to watch one 3-hour NBA game tonight, or if you're anyone other than Nick Wright, check out the Cavs and Raptors. One team has the best record in the East, the league's best bench, and a mascot named after the 1993 hit film Jurassic Park. The other has LeBron James. Cavs beat the Raptors the last time these two teams played. That was 39 roster changes ago for Cleveland. Nick, so many jokes. How important is this game for Toronto and Cleveland?
I think, oddly enough, this game actually is more important for the Raptors because all of a sudden, that 1 seed could go away. They've lost 4 of 7. They had the brutal loss to Cleveland that I think shook a lot of people's confidence in was this going to be the same old Raptors, or was this going to be a new version of the Raptors that could actually compete with Cleveland in the postseason? And now, all of a sudden, with a red-hot Boston team that's winning without Kyrie Irving, winning without Marcus Smart, they lost to Boston in their most recent game. They play Cleveland tonight, and then on a back-to-back play Boston again. They could be, in 36 hours, the 2 seed in the East. They don't want to be the 2 seed in the East. They don't want to have to face Cleveland potentially in round 2 of the playoffs. So Cleveland, if George Hill plays, it will be, and if Kyle Korver's back, we don't know if he will be or not, it could be theoretically their first game all season with the lineup they will go into the playoffs with. So in that regard, it's important to see how Cleveland looks and if they can finally get, a handful of games under their belt with what their actual rotation will be. But for the Raptors, if all of a sudden you lose the 1 seed to a Boston team playing without Kyrie Irving, that's problematic for any chances they have in the postseason.
You make a great case for it being more important for the Raptors. I'm just going to go on the other side just so we can talk about it. The guys who haven't been with LeBron, you talked about the lack of people being familiar, the lack of having everyone that's going to be on the roster healthy and in a basketball uniform. What if they defeat the Raptors again by an unquestionable margin. How much confidence do these guys who don't have playoff experience, because going into the playoffs, we're like, man, Jordan Clarkson, how's he going to do? Larry Nance Jr., how's he going to do?
Yep.
Last time they played Toronto, that was their first time with LeBron, them playing. So in the locker room, JR knows. Kevin Love, he knows. Tristan Thompson, he knows what LeBron can do to these teams in the East.
But nobody else
new
does.
Guys, until they put their eyeballs on it and been like, wow, these guys, man, we do have an advantage with LeBron. And that's the one thing that in getting to know Shane Battier and getting to know Dwayne Wade and Ray Allen when they were in Miami, this is something that they thought, but they never knew until they got on the court with LeBron, the overall effect LeBron has on the opposition. So I believe it's just as important for the Cavs and these new guys to have success against the team that has the number one seed in the East.
And you bring up an interesting point with the new guys, because you also have to keep in mind where the new guys came from. Rodney Hood, Larry Nance, Jordan Clarkson, all three of those guys had played their entire careers in the West. So it's not even like they got to experience the other side of it, like that they dealt with LeBron. When the Cavs picked up Kyle Korver at the deadline last year, Korver hadn't played with LeBron, but he'd gotten whooped by LeBron in the conference finals.
It would be like all these guys have been in the West, but LeBron had kryptonite for Golden State. But these guys had been in the East. They had never seen it before. They're like, man, Golden State's been killing everyone. So now they come to the East. LeBron has that same effect, and I just believe it has an effect on them. They don't have the playoff experience with LeBron, but the more games you can play in it like this, they bring you closer to what the intensity will be like in the playoffs.
I think looking at the Eastern Conference now with a handful of games left, I don't seem to care that much that they still have to get George Hill and Kyle Korver back and they have to figure out a way to play. Like, maybe it doesn't matter because LeBron James has single-handedly taken this team on his back to where they are right now, to the point where no one's really sure who could be one or two when this ends in the East, where the Cavs could very well be in the driver's seat without even have their starting rotation implanted in place heading into the postseason.
Well, Jenna, one day it will matter. Even with LeBron getting monster numbers in the playoff, it matters. LeBron, say he has a stat line of 35, 12, and 9. Where do they get these other 55 points from? These guys and whoever is the third scorer, we know what we're going to get from Kevin Love. But it's important who that third guy is. Is it going to be Rodney Hood? Do we have to wait for Clarkson to come off the bench to be able to get it going? George Hill, is he going to be strong? Kyle Korver, will he be a liability defensively? So, right now it might not look, man, they're just storylines. But come playoffs, LeBron needs some help. And who are these characters? It becomes important to be able to start identifying them.
To CeCe's point, one of the last times LeBron didn't make the NBA Finals, when the Cavs got knocked out with a supporting cast that is similar to this one, got knocked out by the Orlando Magic. LeBron in that series averaged 39, 8, and 8. 39, 8, and 8 for a series, and they lost in 6 games and would have lost in 5 if LeBron didn't hit a buzzer-beating 3 to win Game 2. So, there is precedent, granted it was a decade ago, of LeBron being brilliant and his team getting knocked out. I don't think there's a team in the East this year as good as that Orlando team was. But one other thing to watch for in tonight's game. LeBron is talking more this year, more recently than I've ever heard him talk. I'm the MVP. I should be the MVP. Now, everyone at this table has said it's James Harden. I believe it should be James Harden. LeBron understands what these 3 games are: Toronto, Washington, Philly. He also understands that the Cavs, if they go 5-0 to finish the year, will somehow finish with more wins this year than they had last year when there was no turmoil, when they had Kyrie Irving. I think you're going to see the closest thing to playoff LeBron in the regular season that you could see tonight and down the stretch, and that'll give you a better idea of how good this team is against good competition when LeBron's firing on all cylinders.
All right, let's take a break right there. Coming up, Josh Rosen's former coach has some harsh words for him, but are they strategic harsh words? That's next on First Things First. How important is a good night's sleep? We ask ourselves that every day here. Very important if you're Klay Thompson, apparently. In a recent podcast, Kevin Durant let us in on a little secret. Klay slept through practice the day before he went off for 60 points against the Pacers last season. Nick, how much more impressive does that make Klay's 60-point game?
I mean, I don't know if it makes it more impressive, less impressive, more fascinating. Here's what I do know. If you were to tell me there's a Warrior that slept through practice, you can have Klay Thompson or the field. My money is going on Klay. Klay is known as the coolest Warrior, the chillest Warrior, and sometimes that means Man, bleep this alarm. I'm going back to bed. Cece, you ever sleep through a practice?
No.
Never?
No.
Wow. Okay, all right. I thought we were going to get a story there because I assumed
the only way you
yes.
get a show sleeping on stuff is like Charles Barkley. That's the only way you get a show. No, I was the other way, man. No, I was at practice. Practice was important, but it is nice to see because it is one of the characteristics around the Warriors that help make them go that Clay is so chilled. With Draymond being very intense and all the optics being on the rest of the team, Clay helps bring some balance to that team.
Absolutely.
All right, good stuff. Moving on to golf. So obviously we're talking Tiger. The Masters start on
you ever
Thursday.
been late? Yeah. What about last week? Yeah.
Wait, who, me?
Yes.
Never. Never. You're just lying to America.
What time does the morning meeting start?
When I get there.
See, there you go.
It can't be late
His
if it starts when I get there. Just letting you know. Literally impossible to be late.
I wish America could see me right now. I'm twerking.
The Masters
Get it, Nick, right? Get it.
start on Thursday, but the buzz starts today with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson being paired together for a practice round. Tiger will be looking to take home his 5th green jacket. What are fair expectations, Chris, for Tiger?
Well, first, Jenna, what you read there, that's a great read because the information. You're talking about two people who despised each other, two people who did not they didn't want to shake hands, they didn't want to make eye contact. There was no fiercer rivalry on the PGA Tour than Tiger and Phil, and it was real. It's more like a basketball rivalry compared to a normal golf, a gentleman's game. So him even playing a practice round, that people on tour say this is a different Tiger, that he understands that, man, he missed golf. And even his relationships, he's trying to repair that, trying to repair his image. This is a huge thing for Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson to decide. With all the time in the day that they're going to play 9 holes together, it lets you know where Tiger is mentally and all the adjustments and the appreciation he has for the game of golf now.
And I think your guy, Fred Couples, who had some quotes about this, I think he's playing with them as well. So, he is considered maybe the nicest guy on tour.
There's no one more loose than Freddie Couples.
Right.
I mean, there wasn't a day that he wasn't happy.
And so if you needed someone to kind of bridge a gap, Fred Couples is a good option for it. But when you ask me what are expectations, I mean, Tiger going to win this thing by 4 strokes or 6 strokes. Like that, once Tiger's back to me and he's back to me, now I'm just talking about how much we're winning by. And when I say we, I attach myself to Tiger in this regard. Absolutely. Go win the damn thing, Tiger.
Now,
Let's do another Tiger Slam. Let's get to 18 quick.
Tiger's a normal human being. He gets really nervous, especially on the first day in those first 9 holes. So watch him on Thursday. When he tees off that first shot in those first 9 holes, if he gets off to a good start, watch out for the weekend.
All right. Finally, the Odell Beckham trade rumors continue to swirl. And if you're asking 7-time Pro Bowler A.J. Green about the matter, he's got a very simple answer. That's stupid, man. The Bengals wide receiver goes on to say Odell is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. CC, you agree with A.J. Green that the Giants should just hold on to Odell?
Odell is I mean, we talk about the Giants, and you guys know I love the organization. I love the way they've done things for years. Odell's the best wide receiver to ever play for the Giants after 4 years. So A.J. Green, you're talking about a guy who's low maintenance, a guy who says nothing. 2 words. It's like E.F. Hutton. It's like Jamila on the staff. If they say something, man, it's important. You better listen up. That's A.J. Green. That's not one of the, that's not Antonio. That's not one of the, no, this is A.J. Green. And it would be stupid. Because when you have the guy who's the best at his position in your franchise history, man, you'd have to come to me with, I told you guys, I wouldn't trade him.
You wouldn't even, and CC said last week, even if you come to me with 2 first-round picks, you got to tell, what are the first-round picks? Do I have a wide receiver attached to it? There was...
If Cleveland gave me number 1 and number 4, I would not trade Odell.
Oh, well... Now,
no one asked you.
Okay.
I'm trying to tell you.
Well, you would do it.
No, I was just taken aback by the comment.
No, because there is not a wide receiver in this draft that can replace him. And there are not 2 players that are going to change this franchise the way Odell has already. When you already have a proven commodity, why take a chance and roll? Man, these draft experts, they ain't no experts. It's a roll of the dice. Of the first 32 picks, let me tell you something. 20 of them are going to be bust. Do I want to enter that, or do I want to know and manage the situation that I already have that is a proven talent?
Assuming you can manage it, because so far it has not been fully managed
it's the NFL. If you are in the NFL business, you are in the business of managing the personalities. All right? That's on every team. New England's trying to manage Gronk right now. So don't act like you ain't in the talent management business. They trying to manage, hey, man, do I want to play with these people anymore? So that is part of the culture in the NFL, is to be able to manage and cultivate that talent and get the best out of it.
While 1-4, I would make the trade. The general.
Okay, but who are you going to get?
Even if you don't draft a wide receiver.
Okay, just tell me, though. How does this change it? Put those two names.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. At number 1, I'm taking whichever quarterback the Giants want. At number 2, I'm taking, because they have the second pick already in New York, I'm taking Saquon Barkley. And at number 4 pick, I'm taking Chubb. And I've got the best offensive player, the best defensive player, and my franchise quarterback. I'll make it do with the wide receivers. But I don't want to, you're almost forcing me to argue a point that I don't want to argue, because the point that because I don't think 1-4 are available. But let's say San Francisco made the trade, right? 9 and next year's number 1. The reason that if you're the Giants, you think long and hard and probably don't do that is you got to realize if in consecutive years you have the 9th pick and the 15th pick, right? And then 5 years later you look back on it and one of those players turns into Odell Beckham Jr., you are thrilled with the haul.
But
we've never seen
thrilled. You've told us this. Mm-hmm. We've never seen a wide receiver like Odell. Oh, but we're getting ready to go in the draft. There is no one in the draft, bro.
There's no wide receiver. You can't duplicate his production for his position. No. I totally agree with you. When I said you get Odell Beckham, I mean that production at a different position. But we're arguing over something we don't disagree with. Both of us believe you should keep Odell Beckham Jr. Of course, there's a price for me. Like 1-4 would be the price. But the other thing that I want to bring up is this. I think some of the noise yesterday coming out of New York, some of the reports, he's on the block for 2 firsts. I believe there was a little testing going on. Let's see if Odell fires off a foolish tweet. Let's see if Odell does something that gives us further belief that he's going to be unmanageable. Or let's see if all that's happened this offseason, because let's also keep in mind what we're talking about.
But something already happened this offseason, Nick.
I understand that. But
after the organization sat down and spoke to him last year.
You know what? I'm going to say something that's going to be unpopular. What happened this offseason was he was surreptitiously recorded without his knowledge. What happened this offseason was not Odell.
Don't act like nothing happened.
I'm not acting like nothing happened.
This is the most important offseason of his career.
Yeah.
Something happened.
I agree something happened.
And the Giants think something happened. Which is more important.
And the Giants think something happened following the Giants owner already sitting down with him to say, we don't want anything else to happen because we want to keep you. Please don't let anything else happen.
Which is why I view what happened with Odell, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. But I view it differently than a fight in a nightclub. I view it differently than someone out in public doing something to bring disrepute upon the franchise.
I would much rather get into a fight in a nightclub.
Than having to go into the
I would much rather that.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, there is something we disagree with. I think that when you say Odell was told he needed to stay out of trouble, I think, again, I'm not justifying the behavior at all. Being in a hotel room with a woman, a French Instagram model, I understand there were drugs in the hotel room. It looks like that. It was not something I think Odell thought would ever get out. I think he thought, I can do this and totally stay under the radar. I think most people...
Well, that proves Jenna's point that his thinking's not in the right place.
Right.
Because there's no way that he would have been in that room being self-reflective thinking this would be cool. Because you know what I'm telling you who he's not cool with? He's not cool with the NFL office. He's not cool with the Giants ownership. And let me tell you the people at Nike. You think they woke up happy?
No.
Oh, okay then.
No.
Those are the people who happen to be paying them.
Of course. But we would all feel differently, right, if he was the one that tweeted out that video? Like, it's a different thing. He thought it wasn't going to get out.
He was still doing it. He now might have to be in a drug program because of a video that by mistake got out. That's a big deal.
That ain't something you want.
Nobody thinks it's something
No one wants to be tested three times a week.
All right.
No one wants to be tested 3 times a week randomly.
I agree.
No one.
Agreed.
All right, moving on. The NFL draft is right around the corner. Still time for draft picks to slide up and draft picks to slide down based on just about anything. For Josh Rosen, it's been, an interesting process. He's been called a lot, a little cocky, a little arrogant, a little too intellectual. And now he's being called, wait for it, everyone, a millennial. Former UCLA coach Jim Mora Jr., who coached Rosen for 3 years, had this to say about his former quarterback, quote, he needs to be challenged intellectually so he doesn't get bored. He is a millennial. He wants to know why. Millennials, once they know why, they're good. Rosen tweeted this out. Why? Shrug emoji. Hashtag why. CC, What did you make of Jim Mora's comments? And seeing what Josh Rosen tweeted, do you still think they're on the same page with what the ulterior motive might have been?
I'm going backwards order. The Josh Rosen tweet, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't draw a conclusion from that. What I'm going to tell you with Mora, Mora's been around the NFL too long. Former NFL coach, son of an NFL head coach. I believe that he is part of the group that does not want Josh in Cleveland. That, to me, that's why these comments came out. It was rumored that during the season, Josh said that he didn't want to be in Cleveland. He's come out afterwards and said, I didn't say that. I will play anywhere. But you don't get those types of rumors. Typically, there's some smoke there, there's some fire. So I believe that part of Rosen's decision to come out, part of that group was the head coach. No one in Josh's group has more experience than Jim Mora does as far as the NFL. So I'm sure the kid went to him as a resource. As far as, do I decide to come back or do I go into the draft? And in doing that, I believe collectively he's saying, I think you'll be great. I think you're ready for pro football, but I want to avoid Cleveland. So let me put some comments out there so you don't get criticized. To me, that's why he makes a comment like this, because he also went on to say that Josh is a franchise quarterback, believes he's going to be great in the NFL, and that the thing that was the most alarming was he suggested that Cleveland
should take Darnold. He didn't, suggested. He flat out said it. He said Darnold fit. If I were drafting for Cleveland, I would draft Sam Darnold.
Cleveland don't have a system, though, because when you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a system. So it's not like he's trying to fit, this square into Cleveland square compared to Josh going to another offense that's more fitted to his type. They are trying to get Josh to be able to avoid Cleveland altogether. That's what I believe. I don't have a source, but I've been doing this long enough to know. The draft process, we watch college football, and then as soon as they end their final game, our job as NFL analysts is to tear people down, to say what they can't do. The phenomenal story from UCF, Shaq Griffin. You know what people are saying now? Oh, the kid's got one arm. Hey, he's been playing with one arm since he was 4 years old. So now all of a sudden, all the NFL experts are, the guy he got one arm.
He's got one arm.
That's what he's been playing with the whole time.
That's all he knows.
But that was good enough for his tape, good enough for him to be Defensive Player of the Year in his conference. Yes, but this is what we do. Right. His 40 time. Oh, he's overweight. Oh, he's an intellectual. That's what we do so we can slot him into the draft. It's tear him down. All right, and then once they get drafted, then we'll build them back up. But until the draft, it's a tearing down process.
I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying about what Jim Mora is doing. My question for you is, isn't that a risky gambit? Because if a team doesn't believe what you believe, that Mora and Rosen are in cahoots, couldn't a team like the Giants, who are drafting at number 2, when they're weighing who to take, say, man, this guy's college coach has questions about him? Right.
There wasn't any questions that he brought up in this. He said he had to be challenged. Most smart people, most great athletes, they have to be challenged. So he didn't say anything that was not a trait of a great athlete.
But when you pair it with the previous comment about I wouldn't take him number 1.
I think the Giants are smart enough to know. They've been doing this long enough to be able to read between the lines. He didn't say what when Sanchez was deciding to come out.
When Pete Carroll said he needs to stay,
yes.
He's not ready.
Kelly at Notre Dame said the quarterback shouldn't come out. Deshaun Kaiser, he shouldn't come out of college. He was not saying the things that those college coaches said about their quarterbacks.
All right, let's break it there. Coming up after the break, is it time to consider Jay Wright in the same conversation as Coach K? That's next on First Things
Coach J, Coach K.
Welcome back to First Things First. College basketball analyst Jason Capel joins the show.
To see you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Jason, nice to
you.
see you. We were
Likewise.
talking earlier in the break that CC made racks on racks on racks.
Wow.
Racks on racks.
Stack 'em.
Because Villanova
Stack them.
Villanova
covered every single game, Jason.
Man, every game.
By double-figure points.
Yeah.
There hasn't been this type of dominance in the NCAA tournament since 2009 with the Tar Heels.
It's unbelievable.
Their run with Tyler Hansbrough, dominant throughout.
All right, well, 2 months ago, Villanova's head coach Jay Wright sat right where you are, Jason, and laughed and smiled, talk about the joy of college basketball, what he was wearing. He was a nice guy. I thought, no way this guy's going to win the title. He's literally...
Jenna smiled.
Hey!
Well, you waited to get that line in. Anyway...
Sharp guy.
Jay Wright won a title last night. Villanova capped off their dominant tournament performance with a 79-62 win over Michigan, led by 31 points out of Dante DiVincenzo off the bench. Wildcats win their second national title in 3 years, Jason. How are they able to dominate, the entire tournament, but especially last night over Michigan?
Simply, they had more weapons.
Yeah.
You take Brunson out, he's in foul trouble. Their bigs can't make shots from the perimeter. You insert the sixth man of the year, albeit, in the Big East, and he just goes on and puts on a show. No fear, wasn't afraid of the moment. He came in ready to hoop from the onset. And when you take away the three-point line, you need guys that can drive and get to the basket. He did that, softened up the defense, got his confidence early. That allowed him to take those confidence-building shots from way downtown. What a performance by the young man.
How important was it for him? Because they were struggling offensively when he was able to come in and give them a boost. But it's very, very rare that we're able to see, and you pointed out, not only the three-point shooting, but his ability to go up and under. He has to pull up here,
yes,
but to get to the hole, to get that offense back going, because at halftime, Villanova had to be ecstatic, yes, about having the type of lead, given that they haven't played a lot of good basketball.
Well, he had 18 quick points. He came in, instant offense. It's the greatest performance off the bench since Tommy Shepard in the movie Above the Rim. You come in, you're just ready to go from the bench.
Let's
And
throw it
that's
down.
exactly what he brought. He came in, no corduroys, but he came in ready to play as soon as the ball touched his hands, and it was special. This kid will be a legend in Philadelphia for the rest of his life.
Well, and, listen, I understand he's a white kid from Delaware. He's an amazing athlete.
Oh, big time
athlete. We stereotype guys, especially if you haven't been watching Villanova all year. You don't know
It's not
him.
stereotype.
Okay, all right. Well,
they did a movie about it.
Regardless,
Was it Jaws?
the guy is an unbelievable athlete, and you saw that with his two defensive plays.
The two-hand block on Matthews, I believe, who's a big-time athlete.
The contest at the rim and the one he pinned against the backboard.
With two hands. Blocked it twice.
Blocked it twice. This guy, he was spectacular, and this is why this doesn't always happen in this tournament. And it's one of the great things about the tournament. But the right team won.
Yes.
The best team in college basketball throughout the year, with respect to Virginia, the team that can beat you so many different ways. You mentioned on the show yesterday, Jalen Brunson was going to maybe sweep the Player of the Year awards. Jalen Brunson's your AP Player of the Year, Naismith Player of the Year. He's the best player on their team. He's in foul trouble and shoots less than 30% from the field. You have Omari Spellman, who can't get on track. And they not only win, they win by 17. They win going away. I don't know how you felt. I thought the game totally changed last 5 minutes of the first half. That Michigan was playing their brand of basketball, mucking it up, slowing it down. It looked like, 65 might be enough to win it.
Absolutely.
And then the run Villanova went on at the end of the first half. They continued in the second half. Michigan, it seemed like they took a gut punch they couldn't recover from.
Those two consecutive three-pointers that DiVincenzo made really opened the game up, and you had to look like, Brunson's not playing well. Spellman's not playing well. Bridges hadn't gotten going yet either. We're dealing with this guy who has 18 points, and we know these other guys, the stars of the team, are going to get going at some point. Beeline did a great job getting his team there, 14 games in a row, but the best team in college basketball won the national title.
Jason, Nick made a great point early on about this tournament, that it's a great tournament to watch, that fans absolutely love it. They crave the type of the one-and-done winning, you go home. But it doesn't always make the best team, right? The team that wins isn't always the best team in college basketball. I think this year, the team that won the tournament was actually the best team in college basketball by a long shot, by a mile.
And you think of style of play, an unselfish team, an older team. You have redshirt guys who waited their turn. Again, you talk about Brunson and Bridges. They were role players. They're going to be first-round picks this year. They waited their turn. They played team basketball. They spread the wealth around. And we're talking about their offense. Their defense was pretty doggone good as well, and they're not going anywhere. They're built to last, now winning the championship 2 and 3 years, but also moving into the future as well.
The program that Jay has now, and I believe I'm calling it a program because you have guys elite level at freshmen. Spellman, sophomore, as we saw with Dante, and then the veteran players you mentioned. I thought one of the key components is when you have a guy who's the sixth man, and he comes into the game. We knew he was hot. But the veterans in Brunson and Bridges deciding that this might be my last game. These last 20 minutes, Bridges, I'm going to be in the lottery. It's time for me to show a little something. No. They still deferred to Dante as the most lethal offensive portion there and acquiesced to him to be able to lead them. What type of maturity and what does this say about the coach that the veterans would play that way?
What it says is the role for everybody on the team is simply to win. And that's the culture that Jay Wright has built. Jay Wright said a couple years ago when they won, for a moment he was trying to recruit those top players, trying to get those top 10 guys. He said that's not the culture of Villanova basketball. He goes and gets guys that are going to work hard, going to buy in, going to form a team. So by March, they are the best team in the country. And that's what you've seen. You've seen hardworking players who buy in, that play together. They're completely selfless on both sides of the ball, and those are tough teams to beat.
And listen, to win this tournament, you need to have NBA players.
Yes.
And you mentioned it. They got 2 first-rounders on there.
2 first rounds right now.
DiVincenzo might end up playing in the NBA once he's done with college basketball. But it's an interesting line Villanova's walking right now. And I know it's going to seem like recency bias because they've won 2 of the last 3 titles, but it seems like an effective line. By the way, University of Wisconsin, after going forever without making Final Fours, made a couple, walking a similar line, which was, all right, if Duke, Kentucky, and Carolina are going to go one and dones, right? Well, if you go one and dones once, you basically have to do it every year. Because, or else you're going to go through, you're going to have a drought because your guys leave. If you don't replace them with the best recruits in college basketball, you're not going to be able to compete. While they're doing that, it's not like Villanova's the 80th ranked recruiting class. This year, this incoming class is one of the best of his era since Jay Wright's been there. It's number 12. But they had 38. 42. But guys that Jay Wright knows going to have a redshirt sophomore, going to have a couple redshirt juniors, and come the tournament, we are, along with a guy like Mikal Bridges, who's going to be a lottery pick, we're going to have the best combination of veteran talent, experience, and youth in order to peel off 6 in a row.
Absolutely. And when you take that redshirt year, it helps your body. You get physically stronger, more mature, but it helps your mind to see how things are done, what the culture is. So when you step into that moment, there is no learning. You know what you're supposed to do when you step on the floor and what the expectations are. It's just you said it perfectly. They're a program. The faces change, but the culture and the way they play remains the same. It's been beautiful to watch.
And it doesn't look like this is a team that next year is going to have to struggle to get back to this level of competition.
Well, no, because as Nick said, they have a great recruiting class starred by the point guard coming in, assumingly to replace Brunson and Javon Quinterly, originally committed to Arizona from Hackensack, New Jersey, a fast, flashy guard who has to buy in early, but he's talented. And when you think of the front line in Spellman, Pascal, as well as the most outstanding player, DiVincenzo, Villanova's not going anywhere. And they have a coach now who has to be in the same category. Listen, he has more titles than Izzo, Boeheim, and Bill Self.
And Coach Cal.
And Coach Cal. He's next to get that Hall of Fame speech ready because he has earned that right with what he has done with 2 and 3 years.
And when we were talking Josh Rosen we were talking millennials. You got to know who you're recruiting, right? Everyone you're recruiting in college basketball was born in the year 2000 or later, just because you're recruiting 17 and 18-year-olds. In their lifetimes, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have won more championships. Like, I understand UCLA's got a million.
We use the term blue bloods, but to the millennials, they don't know what blue is.
I mean, Villanova's won one of the epic blue bloods, University of Kansas. They've won 2 titles in the last 60 years. Villanova's won 2 titles in the last 3 years. So while Jay Wright might not be always going after Zion Williamson, DeAndre Ayton, top recruits in the class, you've got a bunch of 16-year-olds who say, what's the best college program I know? I don't know. Is it Duke? Is it Carolina? Is it Villanova?
It's Villanova.
Like, they're now in that discussion with this second title.
And they have pros that you can turn to and say, look, they came, they worked, and look where they are now. Kyle Lowry's doing pretty well for himself. They have guys that have come, bought into the system, won big, but also able to go chase their dreams. And not long ago, we were talking about Jay Wright and Villanova not being able to get out of the first weekend. Not only had they surpassed that, they've won 2 national championships. They got the monkey off their back, and college basketball better be on watch because these guys are not going anywhere. They're here to stay.
All right, Jason, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
Really good stuff. Coming up, could the Patriots really be moving on from Gronk? Next on First Things First. Welcome back. First Things First. Chris Caney's back with us. How was your time off, Chris?
It was good. It was good.
Yeah?
I had to listen to you back and forth.
Yeah, that's what we do.
The Villanova win against Michigan last night. That was a big win for that program.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's huge for Jay Wright. 2 in 3 years. That's pretty good.
It's unbelievable.
All right, so we have possibly seen the end of Gronk in New England. We don't know. Rumors swirling that Bill Belichick is frustrated with the fact that his tight end hasn't been willing to commit fully to the Patriots this season. But don't worry, rumors also swirling that Gronk is equally as frustrated with the strict confines of the Patriot way. No official word from either side, but it appears as if things could be getting contentious in New England. Chris, could the Patriots really trade Rob Gronkowski?
I think the longer that this goes on, the longer that Rob Gronkowski vacillates back and forth on whether or not he's going to come back and play in the NFL, I think that that's going to lend itself to Bill Belichick being open to moving Rob Gronkowski. Now, let's keep in mind, and I know you mentioned this earlier, Nick, they lost Nate Solder in free agency. That's a huge loss. That's going to be hard to replace a left tackle that you can leave one-on-one in protection. But you also had to trade away Jimmy Garoppolo because that's what Tom Brady wanted. And, of course, he circumvented Bill Belichick's wishes. He went above his head to Rob Kraft, and they ended up orchestrating that trade with the San Francisco 49ers. So there are some glaring needs for this team, and what you could get back in return for Rob Gronkowski in the way of compensation could be a way to try to replace some of the losses that you've already had. Now, with that being said, all of the noise about whether or not he's going to retire could affect the potential compensation that you're going to get back from another team, because who's going to give up a significant asset for a player that's contemplating retirement, even though he's controllable with his contract over the course of the next 2 years. So all of these things are coming into play, but the more and more I think about it, as all this noise going on, as we get closer to the draft, I think you'll start to hear more about Rob Gronkowski being moved around the draft.
Right. The question is, would we be surprised, or would he be moved, or would they trade him? There's no one in New England except Brady that can't be traded. We understand that. I don't think Belichick's going to trade him. After thinking about the subject and everything, the reason why, you mentioned Nate Solder, the left tackle, who's been a rock there for Tom Brady on his backside. You mentioned Gronk being the end-of-the-line blocker, being the best end-of-the-line in the running game tight end that we have into the league. Let's look at the rest of the wide receivers. We know that they lost Amendola to free agency to Miami.
Yeah.
All right? Besides that, who do they have as a dependable receiver? Now, Brandon Cook's in the last year of his contract. So I don't expect them to sign him to an extension, because this is when typically they either let you go or they trade you. So Brandon Cook is playing for a contract. Edelman's coming off a torn ACL. So you think he's going to allow Amendola to go out the door free agency, send Gronk out the door, and he's got to replace his left tackle. Now, Bill Belichick's a smart guy. You guys can talk about Gronk being not happy, but he owns the right to him. So I don't believe, because of the number of changes they already have to make, and let's not forget how active New England was last offseason, that we had them as the perennial favorite to win Super Bowl 52, which they weren't able to do, but they won the offseason last year. Yep. Everyone thought that they were so much better than any of the other teams. So we're early in the offseason. We haven't even gotten to the draft yet. I know Gronk, he hadn't given them word on if he's going to play or not, but I would be surprised if Belichick got off of Gronk just because Gronk hadn't made up his mind yet. Because the other things that he has on his plate right now, the left tackle and the backup wide receiver.
Well, listen, I think it's more likely than not that Gronk remains a Patriot, but I wouldn't be shocked by the trade at all. I walked in this morning thinking it was right around even money if they trade him or they don't, because of the history. When you say we know everyone, no one's untouchable except for Tom Brady, we can put names to it. Richard Seymour, who was playing, it was a perennial Pro Bowler, traded to Oakland. Now they got a couple first-round picks for him. That was a great haul. But they didn't have a ready replacement for Richard Seymour.
Chandler Jones.
Chandler Jones was the example I was about to go to. They traded him not because of on-field production. Jamie Collins was traded the next year. They thought he wasn't necessarily, he was freelancing, not fitting the scheme, defense was playing well. Chandler Jones, there was an incident with him showing up shirtless at a police station in the offseason. They didn't love that. And they knew he was about to have to get a bucket of money. Now, with Gronk, what is in the category of them keeping him, he's not a pending free agent. He's got 2 very reasonable years left on his deal at $9 million and $8 million. But when we talk about like potential trades, we saw this past offseason, the ice has thawed between New England and Indianapolis. Indianapolis now has a bunch of these second-round picks Belichick loves so much because of that trade with the Jets when they moved down from 3 to 6. Like, could Indy call him up and say, we'll give you the 36th and 37th picks for Rob Gronkowski? We've got Andrew Luck coming back. We want to get him a more reliable option than just T.Y. Hilton. We want to see if we can supercharge this year with Luck coming back. Like, that to me is something New England would absolutely consider.
I believe Indianapolis is a viable option, but also keep your eyes on Detroit with Matt Patricia. They just got off of Eric Ebron's contract. They didn't exercise the option, which he would have made at the 5th year of his rookie contract. He would have made $8 million. So they decide to let him go in the free agency. They could jump on the Gronk train at that same number that they would be comfortable paying and give Matthew Stafford the type of tight end that he's never had.
Don't you think, Chris, though, at the end of the day, the relationship that Gronk and Tom Brady have, knowing what they've been through together in New England, sure, it's not an ideal situation, but the best chance he has, and maybe this isn't the most important thing to him, but the best chance he has of winning, I know, is staying in New England, finishing it off with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. In your heart of hearts, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that was the best chance for Rob Gronkowski, obviously, but I think you hit the nail on the head when you phrased the question the way that you did, if that's important to him. I don't know that it's as important to Rob Gronkowski to continue to compete at the highest level because he's been in 4 Super Bowls and they've won 2 of them. So the fact is he's already going to be known as a 2-time Super Bowl champion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he wants to sign up for continuing to go through what it takes to be able to compete with the New England Patriots at that higher level.
So wait, what do you think the most important thing is to
That's a lot of pressure, Jenna. Well, you see he has other interests outside of football.
Right.
I think Rob Gronkowski wants to finish this thing with an opportunity to have fun.
That's
and if they happen to win, then that's great. But I don't know that winning is his highest priority right now.
This isn't about money because he's under contract. He's already, in my eyes, a Hall of Famer. Maybe CeCe would disagree, but he is certainly on track.
Boy,
to
y'all showing up. Y'all open up that Hall of Fame door real quick.
Okay,
how
well,
many years has he played?
8.
What? 8 years.
Oh, okay.
8 years at the highest level. And so, okay,
I keep
but
trying to tell y'all that Hall of Fame ain't for the Hall of very good. It's for the Hall of greatest of the greatest.
And in my eyes, just for the record, in my eyes, if Rob Gronkowski never played another down of football, he's already one of the 4 best in the history of his position. He is certainly tracking towards the Hall of Fame if he's not there already. He's got the winning taken care of. He's got the personal accomplishments taken care of. So if now all of a sudden he is thinking more about fun, I get it. And the Detroit thing, CeCe, is interesting to me. Because what do we know about Matt Patricia? Man, he was with New England, but he was not exactly a devout believer, I don't want to say believer, but a devout disciple to the Patriot way either. He is the man that walked off the Super Bowl champion airplane wearing the Roger Goodell clown nose shirt. He is the guy that maybe has skewed, drawn outside the lines more than coaches we have seen for them in the past. Like, he might have a more fun program in Detroit than ones that we've seen Scott Pioli install in Kansas City or Bill O'Brien install in Houston. Like, that could be an interesting fit. All
right, thanks, Chris. We really appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Guys.
Coming up, should LeBron be worried about even getting to the finals? That's next on First Things First. All right, finally, we're talking Tiger Woods. The Masters starts on Thursday, but the buzz starts today with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson being paired together for a practice round. Tiger will be looking to take home his 5th green jacket. CeCe, what are fair expectations for Tiger heading into Augusta?
And if you're a fan of golf, you're a fan of Tiger Woods, you can understand why he would be the favorite. Typically, in his comebacks, he's been coming back to the Masters where he hadn't played much golf.
Right.
But the thing is, he's played in several tournaments. We have seen him with this new swing. It's very dependable. We've seen him be able to practice. We know that his short game is outstanding, so how does he drive the ball? If he drives the ball well, we know with his short game, Nick, in the last tournament he was in, he was 59 for 59 putts at 9 feet and in. If he putts anywhere close to that, Tiger Woods could be putting on his 5th green jacket on Sunday night. He has played well enough to be able to win the Masters. The thing we need to watch is he's changed 2 things in his game. He changed his driver. He put a different shaft in there that's a little bit lighter, which Freddie Couples played with him yesterday, said he's getting great results from. So driver and 3-wood off the tee is going to be able to dictate if Tiger Woods is able to get that 5th green jacket.
I believe if Tiger Woods is just middle of the pack, driving accuracy, not counting when he's driving with the irons. I'm talking about when he's using his driver or 3-wood. If he can be middle of the pack, he's in the top 4 of this tournament on Sunday, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if some of the we've seen from other players when Tiger's in the hunt late, if that affects them. Because we saw him at the Valspar a few weeks ago not take advantage of any par 5s, basically, because his driver was inaccurate and he had a putt to force a playoff. We saw him the following week in a very tough field dominate the par 5s, despite not having good driving accuracy, and be in it until he was on the 15th hole on Sunday when he drove it out of bounds. If he's accurate with the driver, he's the most dangerous golfer out there.
Right, and don't be surprised by this weekend. I've walked a lot of rounds with Tiger in other tournaments. I've been to 10 Masters at least with Tiger Woods, walking with his group, walking with him, hit shots. There is no home court advantage bigger than Tiger Woods on a run at Augusta. So not only have the players, have they faltered, but the crowd and the noise that Tiger creates at Augusta, it's all a part of it.
And another reason there's some home court advantage for Tiger at Augusta is the width of the fairways. You can be a little more wild with your drives. And what we've seen Tiger, not just in the Masters, but in repeated tournaments, you've said it. People won't believe it, CC, but you've said it walking with him. He's nervous first hole.
Yes.
And if that first hole is one of your scoring holes, and you drive it sideways, and all of a sudden you're fighting for par on a scoring hole, that puts you way behind the 8 ball. The scoring holes at Augusta are predominantly towards the back 9.
Yes.
So even if he gets off to a bit of a shaky start, he can make up for it on the back 9, which is one of the things he's been so successful
I was just going to say the same thing you did. I've walked at least 10 holes 10 different times in 10 years with Tiger Woods. He's a funny guy.
Just 10 holes, not 10 rounds?
10
just one hole a year?
One hole
Fly
a
to
year.
Augusta. I'm going to do the 17th on Saturday.
That's what you took
boys.
out of the story.
Well, the story didn't make sense, and it was a lie. I thought America should know.
I've had it with you, Nick Wright. That's fake coffee. New topic. So the growing uncertainty over who will be in the NBA Finals, because we must know now and can't possibly let it play itself out. At the start of the season, the Warriors were the overwhelming favorites to win it all. Overwhelming would be the word used there. Now, with injuries up and down that roster, not so much. According to major sports books, the Rockets and the Warriors both have the same odds to win the NBA title. Both teams sit at 1-2 in the Western Conference, so that adds to the drama. Nick, how big of a deal is this?
Man, this is interesting to me. This is the first time in over 3 years any team has had equal or better odds than the Warriors to win the NBA championship.
Nick, why don't you be a little bit of a Vegas whisperer here? Why don't you try to tell the people what Vegas is trying to tell the people in having the odds being even?
Okay.
It's the greatest question you could have asked him. He's so excited to answer.
But it's an important question. I'm glad you did ask it. What is baked into this number is that clearly the line makers in Vegas share the belief that you have, that Chris Broussard has, which is that the Warriors without Steph Curry could get got in the first round. Vegas is not sitting here telling you Warriors-Rockets Western Conference Finals is a coin flip. What they're sitting here telling you is we are not certain, not nearly as certain as we've been in years past, that the Warriors are going to get there. Because the one series we know Steph's not playing in is round 1, and I'm very confident in saying this. If the Warriors and Rockets play in the Western Conference Finals, even with the Rockets having home court advantage, if the Warriors have their full complement of players, which we think they will, the Warriors will be the favorites. So why would they have even odds? Because they have more questions about the Warriors getting to the Western Conference Finals than they have about the Rockets getting to the Western Conference Finals. Again, there's been a 3-day window in the last 3.5 years where the Warriors were not the solo favorites to win the championship. That was the 3 days after they went down 3-1 to the Thunder. Once it got to 3-3, they went back to being the favorites. They were the favorites all year. They were the favorites the tail end of the previous year. That's it. So this is the reason we're talking about Vegas odds changing is this is jarring. We talked Tiger Woods earlier. This is Tiger in his prime not being the favorite to win the Masters. Like, it simply didn't happen.
And it's also sending out a red flag to those who potentially you need to watch. That's why round 1 and round 2 in the NBA playoffs, I believe, will be better than the rounds that we have seen before. I believe this will be the most contested championship that Golden State will go after, because when Steph misses series number 1, you're getting ready to miss a superstar.
Right.
And we're going to be able to see that instantly.
So with the Warriors, the key to their success is obviously injuries, because if they can overcome that, they're okay. But what is it with the Rockets? What do you think the key is for them in the postseason?
It's about confidence. It's about what they did this offseason. People don't mention them, but, man, P.J. Tucker, man, he's a bad Like he brings a lot of Capella. Did we know that he was going to develop like this? Chris Paul, his ability to stay healthy and his ability to share the spotlight and the basketball with James Harden. And James Harden has put together one of the 4 best seasons that he's ever had, because he should have been MVP before this season. But he didn't give up on that. We got Chris Paul. He came back and still put up arguably his best season as a pro.
And I want to draw a comparison that people will remember. One of the things that unlocked the Warriors was good fortune. Right after Steve Kerr got there, keep in mind, they were starting David Lee. David Lee got hurt. They insert Draymond Green, and all of a sudden it's a revelation. Draymond Green was not who we think of now, the defensive player of the year, emotional leader of the team. He was considered being thrown into a Klay Thompson for Kevin Love trade, right? So they didn't know what they had in Draymond Green until he got out there. Well, the Rockets were starting Ryan Anderson. He got hurt. Then they insert P.J. Tucker into the starting lineup. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, we're not dropping off offensively, and we're adding so much defensively. There are 2 numbers that I think define why the Rockets can beat. Now, I don't know that they'd be favored to beat, but certainly can beat a full-strength Warriors team. The first number is this: 65 wins. They're right now 62-15. They're going to get to 65 wins. That's a historic number in this league. 20 teams have done it. 15 of those 20 teams have gone on to win the title. If you don't care about the history, you only care about the here and now, here's the other number. 41 times the Rockets have played with their 3 best players: Harden, Paul, Capella. They are 39-2 in those 41 games. You want to beat them in a series? You got to beat them 4 times. They've only lost twice all year with their full complement of players. That's the other reason, in addition to Steph's injury, that people think Houston might be, while they struggled unveiling the championship banner for the Astros, they might get a second shot at it with the Rockets this year.
Just like Philadelphia, Villanova with a backup coming in, Nick Foles being a backup. We could have the same thing going on in Houston. Astros, and then here we come with the Rockets.
It's a real thing.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.